All right, looks like we are live. So today I'm going to react to Tulsi Gabbard's keynote at Bitcoin 2023. I also reacted to Robert F. Kennedy's keynote at the same conference. There's a link in the description, or if you guys hit subscribe and all that other stuff, you're going to see it pop up in your feed. I haven't really listened to a lot of what Tulsi Gabbard really has to say, so this is the first time I think I'm sitting through an entire like written speech of hers. So let's just react to it, see what she has to see what she has to say. And we're watching it at 2.5 speed or whatever. So hopefully you guys can hear stuff quickly, or just make you go back and rewatch it. But let's get into it.
So good to be here to join all of you to talk about this most essential piece of our identity as Americans. It's freedom. I want to start with a quote by Harry Truman that I think is perfect for this moment as a great reminder of our founder's vision. He said, "America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, imagination, and an unbeatable determination to do the job at hand."
No, I gotta say something. The nation kind of was built on fear of that someone else is going to be telling us how to practice our own religion and to think the way that they want us to think. So to say it wasn't completely not based on fear is kind of a misnomer, because we were literally fleeing something that we were afraid of to create the nation that we have today. Not to say what she's saying isn't wrong. Those other things are correct. But to say that it's not, it wasn't built on some sort of fear is kind of a misnomer.
When we think back to those powerful words and look at the country, the society, the climate, the culture that we're living in right now, this culture of fear that is so pervasive, we see how far off we've gotten from that unbeatable spirit. I served in Congress for 8 years and ran for president in 2020, the Democratic primary. And while we like to have this idea that we have great, courageous leaders in Washington who are selfless and proactive and who have foresight, who are looking around the next corners, seeking how do we solve the problems not just of today, but for tomorrow, set us up for success, unfortunately, that's not the case.
Just put up a picture of Dianne Feinstein right there. Definitely not looking around any corner anytime soon.
We know. Unfortunately, on a day-to-day basis, we are surrounded by leaders who are driven solely by fear. Fear of being canceled, fear of being criticized, fear of being unpopular. It's one of the first things that I experienced and was kind of eye-opening for me when I was elected to Congress back in 2012 was within the first few days on the floor of the House of Representatives, I saw how much Congress is like high school. We had different cliques. The cool kids were here, the nerdy kids were here, the jocks were there, the outcasts were sitting by themselves. No one wanted to be caught on C-SPAN sitting next to them. People were concerned about, well, if I hang out with you, I might not get invited to this cool party. I'm not exaggerating. These are the things that are on the top of people's minds as they're making decisions that affect us today and in the future. Ultimately, they're driven by a fear of losing power and losing control. And at the heart of it, they're afraid of us. They're afraid of a free society, of free-thinking individuals, people who have the ability to be critical thinkers and make our own decisions for ourselves and to live with the consequences of those decisions.
And that's why if, you are, a quote-unquote free thinker, the mob doesn't like that. They're going to point and make fun of you and call you like, anti-vax and stuff like that, because they use these social pressures to force you into whatever ideology they want you to adopt. And that's not what the country is based on. The country is literally based on, I can adopt any ideology that I want as long as it doesn't infringe on your rights. My rights stop where your rights begin.
And that right there, that freedom, is the casualty of this culture of fear that exists within our leaders. It's one of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party a few months ago, because so it sounds like you might agree with some of my reasoning. The party that I joined 20 years ago, back in Hawaii, the party of JFK and MLK, this Big Tent Democratic Party that actually welcomes people with different...
JFK, let's go. RFK, next president. I'm not biased.
...ideas, encourage vigorous debate, encourage individual liberties and free thinkers. It's unrecognizable today. Instead, we have this elitist cabal that is made up of leaders in the Biden administration, those in Congress, we have permanent Washington, the mainstream media, big tech, the national security state, all working together, driven by this singular, insatiable desire for power.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Carlson quote. Is like, you don't need a formal conspiracy when all of their interests align. If all of the interests for all of these different groups, all of these politicians align towards a specific direction, you don't need a formal conspiracy. They don't need to sit down and, write out a declaration of conspiring to do X, Y, or Z. It's like obvious. Like when you walk into a store, like when you walk into like a diamond store, it's obvious that all the people working there are going to try to pressure you into buying a diamond, but we don't call that a conspiracy. We call that sales. We call that rhetoric.
And in that quest, they do not tolerate dissent. They do not tolerate those who dare to challenge or even question their narrative or their decisions or what they deem is the cause of the day. They demand compliance and they expect us to fall in and lockstep. If you don't, there are consequences. They try to smear and silence and ruin anyone who dares to challenge their power. And you heard from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. earlier. He knows a little something about this. I know a little bit of something about this. They make an example of those of us who dare to speak the truth and call out what is common sense and obvious to the rest of us about their insanity and hypocrisy.
Just look at the FBI whistleblower deposition that just went out. He was literally like, yeah, I would not recommend anyone whistleblowing because it's just going to ruin your life. You're going to get smeared. You're going to become the target of conspiracy theories. And it's just, it's crazy. People are really good at rhetoric nowadays. And I think you can kind of see that in two ways, not only in politics. Politicians have been good at rhetoric since Caesar in Rome. But I think you can really start to understand that when you see what the AI technology nowadays is letting people do. They're letting, I saw Joe Biden in the Bud Light AI thing. That's all rhetoric. The rhetoric now is so proliferated throughout our entire society that it's kind of crazy, but it's also I can see the positive and negative in both sides. Like the rhetoric is going to become so proliferated that it's actually going to force news agencies, us as individuals, us as like our school systems, to really force people to like have that critical thinking and that critical understanding, because we're going to have to, for our own survival, essentially, is to be able to pick out between rhetoric that's Russian disinformation or FBI disinformation, and pick out the actual true nuggets out of, the sea of misinformation. It's also going to force like CNN and Fox News and all these other news organizations to actually make sure that what they're reporting is correct. Like the bombing, like the fake image of the bombing. I think it was at the Pentagon that was showing up, and some places reported like, oh, this is actually happening, and then a couple hours later they're like, oh no, this image was fake. So you can already see it proliferating in society, and we're going to have to be more aware and choosy of what information we allow into our consciousness.
Hoping that by making an example of us, they will then cause the rest of us to self-censor ourselves, to fall in line and to comply. The courageous FBI whistleblowers that we saw testifying before Congress today, they know a little bit about those consequences. They deserve our support to continue to speak the truth, and they will inspire others to do the same. But some of the tools that they're using, that
Free Julian Assange,
is weaponizing our federal agencies and law enforcement to go after their political opponents. The Durham report that was just released exposed this in broad daylight. The Russia collusion was a manufactured hoax, and the FBI was weaponized to use that to undermine Donald Trump's candidacy and presidency. We saw how the corporate media, they are more than willing to parrot the talking points that they are given to support this narrative. We are seeing more and more as evidence comes out how those 51 former senior intelligence officials worked very closely with the media, worked closely with employees of the CIA to stop voters from seeing the information on Hunter Biden's laptop in the weeks leading up to that election. Why? Why did they go through all of this effort to do that? Because they knew that if we saw the truth, we might make a different decision. The ironic hypocrisy in all this is they did it in the name of protecting us, we the people, from being exposed to misinformation and disinformation. But in doing so, they were spreading disinformation.
Yeah, it was funny. In one of my last political science class, I was having this argument with the TA and the teacher and a few people in the class, because we were talking about the rights and free speech, right? And I was like, we were talking about Twitter censoring stuff, which now, you can go look up and see how bad that actually was. The FBI was actually telling Twitter to censor individuals. But in that debate, I was saying, these big corporations, they're not here for our protection. They're here for them and their shareholders to make money. And any institution is corruptible. Any individual is corruptible, right? And I was like, well, what happens when, the state uses this intermediary, Twitter, Facebook, social media? What happens when the state uses this intermediary to censor voices? Is that not the same thing as infringing on the First Amendment right? And everyone in the class was so quick to say, oh no, that's not, that's different. The First Amendment protects, the First Amendment protects you from the government censoring you. Come to find out, 6 months later, the government's using that intermediary to censor individuals. And I'd like to think I'd like to go back and ask the people and the teacher and the TA in that class, what do they think now that we know that the FBI, the government, was using these social media companies to censor people? Like, what's your take on that now? Like,
to try to manipulate us and to steal our democracy.
If the government's censoring you, censoring your speech in any way, they're trying to take away your autonomy. And by taking away your autonomy, they're taking away your freedom. And that's not okay.
Unfortunately, they are also working hand in glove with many of the big tech monopolies who have no problem following explicit or implicit orders coming from the White House or these law enforcement agencies.
She gets it. I like her. She gets it. I'm about it. All right, Tulsi Gabbard.
Political opposition to cancel accounts and manipulate search engine results to influence what information we as voters are exposed to. So these major tools and weapons that they're using against us are actually what is undermining our democracy. The Biden administration's move towards implementing a central bank digital currency is their latest effort towards exerting control and taking away our freedom. No matter how many flowery words they use to deny that there is ill intent or that they will invade our privacy or try to control how we spend our money, no matter how many times they say, hey, this is for your own good. How many times have we heard that before?
Hear me out. I agree with us, the people. It's bad for us that we're going to have to, start using the CBDC, central bank digital currency. But on the flip side, it's also going to be really good because now the government, all these agencies are going to be forced to use the central bank digital currency. And now we're going to be able to see where the spend is going, right? We're going to be able to audit our government a little bit better. So yes, I'm not going to use the CBDC. I'd much rather use my Bitcoin. But if the government wants to use their CBDC and they're able to track and understand where the money that our taxpayers is going to go to, I'm more than willing to let them do that, especially because they're probably going to be using Palantir and Palantir Foundry for crypto. And I'm heavily invested in Palantir and Bitcoin. So I'm riding waves both sides up,
Many. And it's usually followed by something really bad. They're telling us this is for your own good. This is make your life easier. This is going to make things more convenient for you. But ultimately, we know this is about their insatiable desire and mission for total control. They want to be able to surveil every aspect of our lives, to be able to take note of every purchase that we make, small or large. And in doing so, by having this power, they say they would never use it, but they would have the power to be able to control what we buy, how much of it, what we're not allowed to buy, and ultimately freezing our accounts. The fact that we are so limited already in our ability to use cash is evidence of where this path leads. The fact that we are seeing what's happening in Europe with France and Italy, you spend over €1,000 in France, you are suspects and possibly could be investigated. It's not an imagination about where this road heads. Once we give up our economic autonomy, we give up our freedom.
Yeah, what's really interesting, in political science, there's this idea that if Western democracies go and interact with authoritarian regimes, we can use our soft powers to try to influence. Soft powers being like culture, music, technology, stuff like that, to bring those authoritarian regimes closer to democracy. But anytime you interact with anything, you become part of that other thing. There's a dialect that happens between you, and you start sharing ideas. And I thought it was really naive in college when we were saying, oh, this transfer of ideas is only going to work one way. Only Western ideas of freedom are going to get implanted into these authoritarian regimes, but not understanding that there's also this other part of the opponent processing that's going to come towards us, and we're going to internalize some of that authoritarianness ourselves, because that's what a dialogue is. It's bouncing back and forth ideas. And to say that it's not going to affect us in any way, I thought was really naive, and I think we're seeing that today with some of the authoritarian laws that are trying to get passed in the United States. So just some food for thought on the dialectic between Western and authoritarian regimes.
Once we allow someone else to control our wallet, they control our freedom. And that's why when you look at any conversation in Washington around Bitcoin, the first thing you recognize is most of them don't even know what they're talking about. Bitcoin is a word, people use it, what does it mean? Nobody really knows, but they know enough to know that they shouldn't like it because it will undermine their ability to control us. And that's why we're seeing the opposition that we see. So as much as they claim often to care for the downtrodden, to care for those who are living in oppressed countries, those who are economically oppressed, those who are minorities without the opportunities that many others have, and therefore you would think they would be interested in how Bitcoin is transforming the lives of people around the world, but they don't actually care about people. Their desire for power and control trumps everything else, which is why they are leaning so hard into implementing more and more authoritarian style policies here at home. Their arrogance and selfishness knows no bounds. We see it reflected in our domestic policy and in our foreign policy. This cabal of the most powerful institutions in our country. For a long time, trying to keep up a facade of democracy here at home, trying to keep up a facade of democracy. We support democracies around the world, but when it comes right down to it, it's all a lie. Their actions tell a very different story. We're seeing now as we head into this consequential presidential election next year, their arrogance is pushing them to be even more blatant, saying, you know, we're not even trying to hide it anymore. We actually don't respect voters. We don't care for you to be able to hear from every candidate who's running for president. We're just going to cancel the Democratic primary debates altogether. And
when did we not have free exchange of ideas? Why is that not a thing? That's one of, you know, I was a Democrat for most of my life, and now that I'm starting to kind of see like what they're doing and not wanting to have debates, it's mind-blowing to me. Like, I want to hear what the candidates have to say. You know, yes, most of it's probably just rhetoric, but that's better than not hearing what they have to say and just, I'm going to vote for this guy because it's not that guy and lesser of two evils, blah, 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 blah. You know, let me hear what people have to say. Let me hear what they have to say. Let me see the facts. Show me the Carfax.
We're going to rig the election so that New Hampshire is no longer first in the nation, but South Carolina is, because we know Joe Biden's going to win in South Carolina. So when people talk about influencing elections, the things that we're talking about here today are those things about how our democracy is being manipulated, not for the benefit of the people, but for the benefit of the control of those in power. And just like they are doing this for us here at home, where they have no respect for anyone who dares to challenge them, to challenge our government's policies, they see those of us who oppose these policies as the enemy. So too, as they look to other countries, if you fail to kowtow to the wishes of the American government, whether it's good for your country or not, they will also label you as the enemy. They don't care about the well-being of the American people. They don't care about the prospects for peace. They don't care about our national security. It is about power and control. We cannot have a thriving democracy if we don't have freedom of speech. We cannot have a thriving democracy if we don't have an active, free press with journalists who have the courage to tell the truth.
Or to actually report on stuff that's like actually news instead of just tabloid BS.
And we don't have an active democracy when our own institutions that exist for the sole purpose of serving the people of this country are actually being weaponized against us. So when you hear people in power talk about threats to our democracy, the threat to our democracy is not coming from some foreign country. Those are distraction tactics that they are using to get us to not pay attention to what they are doing every single day to us and our democracy and our freedom right here at home. They are dragging us. They're dragging us towards this darkness of these authoritarian style policies and away from this beacon of light that our founders envisioned this country would be, and embodying and striving towards a more free society and a free people. Thomas Jefferson talked about these cowardly leaders when he said, quote, they prefer the calm of despotism to the boisterous sea of liberty. Our choice, our responsibility, as we look to this bleak, dark landscape that we live in, we find hope in recognizing that there's a reason the founders chose the words, we the people. There's a reason why they spoke of a self-governed nation. Our voices, our votes, our daily choice to exercise our own freedoms is the best way to fight against this oppression. It's the best way to fight against those who seek to take our freedoms away. We are
Bring back isolationism.
the ones who must act to stop these actions coming from those in power. We are the ones who must act to defend and protect our freedoms for us today and to defend this country that we love. Thank you so much. Aloha.
So yeah, I think that was a pretty good speech. A lot of the stuff she was talking about, I think, echoes what RFK in his speech was talking about. You know, freedom. A lot of it, you know, like I said, is rhetoric, but at least I agree a little bit more with this style of rhetoric. So yeah, I don't know. I like the video. Let me know what you guys think in the description down below. If you guys have any thoughts on Tulsi Gabbard, I don't really know much about her. I need to do some more research. I don't know what sort of like laws she implemented in Hawaii, so I'd be interested to see what her voting record is. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Tulsi Gabbard. Who do you guys think is going to run? Or what do you guys think? Who do you think is going to win in 2024? Who do you actually want to win? Because those are two separate questions. Who do you think is going to win? Who do you want to win? You know. But yeah, thanks for watching. Check out my reaction video to RFK, another presidential candidate for the 2024 election. And I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure to click that like and subscribe, that notification bell, and all that jazz. I really appreciate it. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers here on the channel, so I can get monetized and start making pennies for this content. Or if you're interested in any of the recording equipment that I use, affiliate links all down in the description down below. And my Bitcoin wallet address is down there too if you want to send me some Bitcoin so I can buy a coffee or something. I appreciate it, and we'll see y'all in the next one.